Yes, you can. I have started recording it.
Okay. Okay. Hi everyone. Today, from today on, we'll be discussing about very project specific. So far, I think you have just got an overview of IIB, MQ, and functional knowledge from HITES. So from today, before I starting, like today, our session will be like how we will be using the documents required for development, how you will understand the interfaces. So that will be our main focus today. So before moving into that, I'll just explain the architecture which we follow in our project. So you might be hearing all of us telling CDC and non-CDC BORD. So I thought just I'll give an overview of what it is. So I think you can see my screen. Just let me know if you're not. Okay, so this is the CDC pattern. So what CDC pattern we mean here is the CDC stands for change data capture. So where this will come into picture is when the source is going to send me a file that will be a non-CDC. That file might be, they'll be sending it in an XML format, they'll be sending it in a flat file, a delimited, whatever it is, that will be called as non-CDC. Why we call this as CDC is source will not be sending all the information through file. Instead, that information will be stored in tables. So that is whatever I am telling is this part, where the source information, everything will be stored in tables. So what we do is, in order to feed the IIB with that information, we have a set of stored procedure written for the bots which are having CDC pattern, and that we will create a data row set out of that information available from here, and we will use a Java server to trigger the stored procedure, and that will be fed to IIB part, as you can see this part. So that row set will be fed to IIB, and then we will be publishing it to Kafka. So this is how the CDC pattern works. So I'm not going to, we have separate session for CDC and non-CDC bots, so I'm not going in depth for it, just I'm giving a knowledge of what CDC and non-CDC so that you will understand the document when I explain. So this is how a CDC pattern looks like. And non-CDC one. Yeah. This is the architecture of non-CDC, where the source, you can see in the previous picture, we noticed that the source will be stored in tables. So here the source application will be sending you a file, where Madhuri had explained you yesterday how they using how she showed how to use the file input node. So for this case, it will be using that, where the source will be of a flat file. So they'll be sending a file. And whereas we do, if any transformations are required for the field, we do a transformation and then we publish it to a Kafka. So this is how in non-CDC for information we have two types. One will be a flat file, another will be a XML. Only flat file will be posted here through only flat file will be using the file input node, whereas for the XML bots we'll be using a queue. So this is how a file input architecture looks like, and the other one
for XML, for XML we are going to use MQ. That's what you said.
Yeah. That is what I'm showing here. This is the source application. When it is going to be an XML, it will be posted in a queue. I think if you remember the session, MQ input node we were using, right? So that will be in that MQ input node, we'll be getting messages from the source in an XML format that will be again posted into our IIB queue, whereas we will do a transformation here and we will publish it to a Kafka. So all these are the existing ones we have in the project. When coming to Orca specific, I think mostly we will have this file input. As per the bots which are coming up right now, so most of the bots, major bots are based of flat files only. So mostly we'll be using this. So this is how the architecture. If nobody has doubts on this architecture, I'll move on to the document.
Shaila, can you go back to CDC design?
Yeah.
So you said the source tables, directly replicating to the EDIS. Is that correct, my understanding?
I didn't tell this process. Is it this one?
Yeah, source to EDIS.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
This,
is Shyam.
so, okay. Okay. This source DB, I'll tell this is the mainframe database where we don't have access. So what in EDIS we have a dedicated schema called RDS schema for EDIS. So whatever the information are here available in the actual table through OGG, that will be replicated to my RDS table.
Yeah, I understand. Because in DB2 we have the, it's kind of materialized views. We can replicate the data from source. I understand table to another table, we can have the replication layer is there. I understand, but here you're just, whatever the data, I mean, let's say that today you got 10 records and tomorrow you may add 5 more records for the same table. So you will get all 15 records or you will get only 5 records to this table, replicated tables.
Shyam, Hitesh here. It will be just 5 records since it is change data captured. So OGG will take care of the timestamp. It will compare the timestamp which it has run earlier on, and it will take all the delta records. So the 5 records which were updated after the timestamp it has run before, it will take only those. That's why it's called change data capture. Only the change is captured and replicated into the source to the RDS, EDIS RDS table.
Okay.
So Hitesh, another question on the same line. OGG, got it. But when we create data stage jobs, right? So there also we develop such logic to pick up the only change record, right? Or the delta records, delta changes.
Yes, that is the intent, because again, the tables are huge. If we go for a full refresh for every time, because these jobs runs every 15 minutes, OGG keeps on monitoring the source tables and it runs every 15 minutes. So if we could do a full load every time, it will be resource, it will be resource consuming, and at the same time,
Actually, there is a possibility from the DB2 tables that we can replicate the change data. We can replicate the data from source to the replication layer, and we may not require to schedule any batches on top of that. So that is the main intent. Of course, data stage can do that, but data stage is the batch processing. So every time we need to kick off the data stage server to, either we have to schedule the job, data stage jobs. Instead of that, whatever the data is there, if they can put the filter condition on the main table, on the date and time filter, so the data will be automatically replicated and keep it into the updated records in the table. That is the concept. That is the reason. Yes, there are two possibilities. Data stage also can do it, but which is required a more strengthened. It is not because which is required. Environment is required. Batch processing is required. Scheduling is required, and some monitoring is required. Instead, we have the feasibility in DB2 that we can create the replica in somewhere wherever you want. Just can replicate the tables always, like whenever the data has been loaded based on the timestamp. So that's the reason they are using CDC.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, so Irfan, so last time we created data stage jobs, right? So definitely that was, those were for full load. Yeah, got it. So there is like, okay. But now when it comes to delta load, right? So for the existing boards, right, I remember like for many board data stage job was being used, correct?
Yes. But actually, we use the existing data stage job, but we change the query of the data stage job, because previously in that query they are using the delta changes, but we change the query for the full load as well.
Yeah, that's why I'm going. So how they were identifying the delta changes based on any date filter or anything? So that was part of data stage job, right? So identifying the changes only, correct?
Yeah, based on the data indicator, based on the data indicator.
Some of the columns can be identified as the filters based on the data. If those things are
based on the data.
Correct. So that's where we can identify the deltas.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, So after you load to the RDS schema, then you are applying the IIB server, I mean, IIB integration, right, Shaila?
After it gets loaded into
After
RDS,
loading the
which
data
that is
into the RDS, then we use the database package. That database package called by the Java batch, and that package create the XML and that put into the MQ.
Okay, so here again you are using the XML. Okay, that's fine. See, that's where, because
XML is
the
created by
condition
the
is you are
Oracle.
putting into the replication is happening into the EDIS. Then why you are again doing the IIB, the integration and all. So that's where you're right, because you are using again Java batches to make them to happen as an XML, and then you are processing through IIB server. I understand.
Right,
Thank you.
right.
Tomorrow we have a detailed session on this. Maybe I think the working session, I think we'll have a better idea, everyone, for training. Okay. Okay, I hope everyone, like whoever is new to this project, I think you might have understanding of what CDC and non-CD is. So now I'll be moving to the a document which we are using it here. We are having three kinds of documents. So one will be my BORD, that is a requirement document. The other one is BODD, it's a design document, and the last one is mapping document. BORD is a high-level document where data mappers will, connect with SMEs and the clients, and they will create it. And nowhere developers will come into picture. Only that will be used for creating a BODD, which is a design document. So that is a high-level document, and BODD will be created based on the BORD. So okay, let me first tell you about the mapping document, and then I'll move. I have three BORD mapping documents where I'll show one will be my non-CDC one, having file as the input, and the other one is XML as an input, and the other one is CDC BORD. So this is how a mapping document looks like. With the help of mapping document only, you'll be able to start your development. So whatever the transformation logic or whatever it is specific to your board, this will be, mapping document will give you a picture of what you need to do. So this, the very first page, this is an index page where data mappers will, whatever the updates that you initially, when you get a document, you'll have an initial draft, and whatever update comes, they'll update based on the version. And this one is the middleware processing nodes. Here, if any specific logic which is applicable to your board or for CDC interfaces, we will have a SQL given by the data mapper. So that will be provided in this board. This particular board which I'm going to explain you is the XML as an input. So that will, no information will be put in this page. So the main tab where we need to focus is this mapping document tab. So this is our main thing where we need to understand. So you will see these many columns. So this will be the target one. So okay, what these means is yesterday Madhuri was creating an XML based on the input employee having ID, address and all. So likewise, from the source we will get something like the XML file also we will have in our hand, and apart from that we will have the XPath of it. XPath meaning the level. If my customer order schedule will be my parent tag, and under that I will have a child tag called customer schedule, and inside that I need to look for this particular element, corp ID. So this is how you need to understand. I think you might have an understanding of reading the XML from yesterday's session. So we have in a single BORD. When I call BORD, it is business object description we call. It is nothing but multiple interfaces. So each and every one of the developers will be assigned with one single BORD which holds the information for all the multiple source, all the attribute information will be put together in one single unit. So that is what we call as business object. So this will be my coming to this part. So how we will create an XML out of this is get shipment schedule. So whatever available in target sector is the one we are supposed to generate, and whatever available in the source is the one which they will be providing you the input file. So you can see the source structure as well as the target one. So this is the one which we are supposed to create, our XML, and this source will have the XPath and the field name. The end one will be your field name. So this is how you should understand the document. And along with this information, there will also be there is also a column called mapping transformation, where it will be mentioned if you are supposed to directly map whatever the information you are getting in input, that should be mapped, or else there are some fields where it will require a transformation. Like yesterday we saw a date transformation, timestamp casting and all, that will be required. And for some we will have a hard-coded values. See, if you see here, they have just written default to OMS, which means we call it as a hard code value. So when you are creating this particular element, source application code is your target field name, and you've given the mapping as default to OMS, which means you just have to directly hard code this value to this field, source application code. Whereas in some case, here everything is a direct mapping. So whatever the input you are getting it in customer group ID, that you are supposed to just map it directly to this field, customer group ID. In some case, you will find the transformation like this, where in this particular, for this raw code, what they are doing is they are having a DB lookup, which means though you are getting the input in form of an XML file, there are some fields which are dependency on database. The source will not have all the information sent in their input file. So in that case, what you will do is we need to have a database hit, and for that you will be writing this particular query in a pass-through statement. When we see the code walkthrough, I'll give a detailed explanation of this. So I'm just telling this is how the transformation part. So with this information, this query will be given by the data mapper, and you just have to use it in your code to get this particular value and map it to this element. So most of the cases it will be direct mapping, and some will be like transformation where you will convert, where you will get the timestamp value in two different fields. You may get date in one source field and the time field in a separate one. So our logic will be, transformation will be like combine these two, and something will require a transformation where the timestamp will be in one format and the target format should be a different one. So we will do such transformation. So this is the same thing. All these are direct mapping, and this is a DB lookup. We don't have much transformation in this part. So this is how you should understand the mapping tab. I hope you understood. If you have any doubts, you can feel free to throw questions.
Yeah, one quick question, Shaila. So can you explain this cardinality column? I have a doubt on it.
Okay.
What exactly does it mean? Yeah.
Okay, here we, here it was not specified. Okay, this cardinality is nothing but for some of the fields, we will be having only one occurrence. Say, let me choose one field. Say, for example, I'm just telling, but this will not be the actual case for this field. Say if I'm having a field called documentation, and under that documentation I'm having action type code and record type code. Whereas next to this document action, the cardinality field, they may be like it will be mentioned as unbounded, which means this document action value will get repeated. So when we say it is repeated, of course from source we may need a different set of values for this action type code and record type code. When they say it is bounded, of course we should get for a sample file where we have multiple values from source having this record type and action type code having multiple values. Only then we can have a loop inside so that we can form a multiple occurrence of document action. You got it?
Okay. Yeah.
That sometimes sometimes it will be mentioned this cardinality will be unbounded, and sometimes it will be mentioned as only 5 or 2, which means the maximum occurrence will be only 5 times and 2 times. In that case, you can form only when you create your target. When you create your target structure, you can just have index of array index of only 2 occurrence and 5 occurrence. It is not required. You just put in a loop and have a counter, because they are mentioning that maximum occurrence as 5 and 0. Only this will be used only for very few fields. Not all the fields will have this cardinality. If the cardinality, most of the documents, maybe I took an older version of the documents, maybe it didn't have. So it will be the cardinality will be mentioned if it is going to be unbounded or multiple occurrence. And also one more thing. Go ahead.
No, got it.
Yeah.
So I was okay. So what you are saying, undoubted, what word you are using? Cardinality value in this column.
Cardinality, if it is going to be the number, if it is, we are not sure how much ever input we get, that needs to be looped when we call it as unbounded, like infinity, unbounded.
Okay.
If it is, there will be a case where the cardinality will be only 1. So in that case, we no need to maintain any loop. So this, good Atul reminded, I didn't explain you these columns. So the level, the XML, we have a different levels, like how yesterday Madhuri showed, the employee was in one level and the other attributes was in the second level. So from here you can see the levels and accordingly you can create. So in this case, we will create an XML get shipment schedule in my first level, and the document data will be the one level next to it. And when I say the one level next to it, you will find its space going forward. We have a separate session for this input and output structure also. So I'm just explaining you how to understand this document. So this will be my field name, and the data type also they'll be mentioning here. Even if it is mentioned in the mapping document, it is our developers, I would say it is developers' duty to go and also check the XSP. XSP is nothing but all the schema definitions will be, for these will be mentioned in the XSP. So you can also go and check in that. So cardinality, what I was telling, that is the one. Sample value will be used in case if there is going to be a with complex transformation, then data mappers will be specifying this is how the output looks like, or this is how the source format looks like. So that will be mentioned here. And this will be the transformation, if it is going to be a direct one, or if we are supposed to do any transformation, that is what will be captured here. And this will be my, if I'm going to map it from any of the source fields, that XPath will be given here, and that field name will be given here. These are all the fields. And this source structure, we not worry about this in case of this when my input is going to be an XML, because every field we are getting it here. And also you will see the mapping document with these number of fields, but our duty is to only consider the fields which are having mapping here. So you can see all these fields are mapped here, but it is not required for us to create all these fields. We'll be just creating the field whatever which is having this mapping. So only that field will be creating. You can see a huge number of fields without mapping, but you need not worry about that. Only these fields you need to map. So, okay, this target structure is nothing but whatever you are having here, that expert, whatever you are seeing here, that for our reference, they'll be just putting it here so that when you create your code, you can have a reference with this and you can create. But when you have this tab and you create, you will not know which fields are having mapping. So better we will have this as our reference and start developing our code. So this is how to read the mapping document. This is my input as an XML. Since my input is an XML, they have given the XPath for it. Here you can see. If anyone has any questions. Okay, I assume everyone got it. Okay, next is we will move to different mapping documents. Every tab is going to be similar. This particular board I have chosen is having flat file. For this particular board, we will get flat file as an input. Flat file, okay, in an XML, you will see if, say, for example, if employee ID, employee name, I have a value. You will have you will have directly tag telling that this is the value. Whereas in flat file, you will just get a value. Say, for example, employee ID 012 will be there, and next space, and you will have the employee name and space their address. You will not know for which field that value is marked. So that is how we will, that's the point in having a non-CDC where file is, we'll get flat file as an input. So all these stats are going to be the same. So how in this non-CDC BORD from here we need to understand this. See, these will be my source columns, whereas in your flat file you will not have all these. You will just have say this is the file format. So you will just get an input file with this, and you need to create a output structure out of it. So in that case, how you need to read this? Say, for example, this data type is my first column, and they are telling it is a numeric string, and the column will be of range 1 to 2. So what I will assume is this 0 and 5 will be the value of this data type. And say here is they've given the sample value is 0, 5, as you can see. And the record type is having length 2, and the column range is 3 to 4. So 1 and 0 will be my column range. So this is how you need to understand this. Based on this, we'll get just a file like this, and in IIB what we will do is we'll be creating a message set. It is like creating a schema, you can say, and then we'll be parsing it so that our IIB, now if you directly pass this to our IIB, of course it will not be understandable. So what we do is we create a message set, like how we see each and every name here, update code, route ID and route code. You will create all these fields and give them a value, like just say my data type will have 2 as its length, and record type will have 2 as its length, so that when the IIB when we parse that, IIB will be sending this data type column having the value 0, 5 and record type 1 and 0. So that is how IIB can understand, and out of this you can create a message set. So this is how you need to understand a flat file. So most of our Orca bots will be like this kind of files. I think some will be from mainframe. You will have hexadecimal values in it, and we'll be using COBOL copybook that we can see later. And the mapping document is same like how we saw earlier. This is going to be my target field, and this is my target XPath. So data type in some cases, okay, here it is not mentioned, and here and one more thing, we have this column called mandatory or optional, which means some elements, whoever is going to consume, they will have a they will have a constraint that this particular field is mandatory in their side. Like we are an integration, and whoever is going to consume, maybe their their system may get failed if we are not going to send this particular field. So if it is going to be that, they'll be mentioning this as a mandatory. So in our case, we may here it is this for this particular creation date field, they have just asked to map us to the current date. That is fine. That we'll be always able to do. In some case, let me see here in the mandatory field. Okay, so here for this particular field called route group ID, route group code, they have mentioned it is a mandatory element, which means from source we should always get this route group ID value. There will be some cases where source will not send this, and when it comes to IAB, we shouldn't process this message. When it is mentioned here, it is as a mandatory, what we do is we are supposed to create a message and publish it only when we have all these mandatory elements getting from source. In case, say, assume there are these 3 mandatory fields. I have got this mandatory field for record type code and route code. I'm getting these mandatory field value. Okay, this is a hard code one, so of course we'll be able to create. Say I've got this, but from source I'm not getting this. So what we should do in IAB is we need to throw an exception that this field we didn't get from source. we'll be throwing an exception that this route group code does not exist, so we are throwing an exception, because even if we send, no point in sending the message without this mandatory field, because we'll be able to publish that to the consumer, but when they consume, when they find this as, when they find this record missing in their whatever they consume, it will be getting failed in their system. So no point in publishing this. So keep in mind that mandatory and optional, it plays one major role here. And when it is optional, say here these two, all these fields are optional. And if you are not getting this any source value for this code, okay, it doesn't have nothing. Okay, so this distribution center ID is an optional field. Say from the source in we are not getting this drop location ID. Of course, it is okay to send this CMM to the publish, because they have mentioned it as optional, and that is not going to be mandatory from their side. So you can, of course, you can publish this XML when the cases are optional. And for mandatory, keep in mind that we will be generating the exception for all the mandatory fields. Okay, so this here there is some transformation for this BORD where they are giving only export only this hours and minutes value. Maybe from source we'll be getting the even the minutes and seconds. They just wanted seconds and milliseconds. Maybe they just wanted to export this hours and minutes only. So that is how we do. For file input, I think that will be the transformation most of the cases. One will be the hard-coded value, where whatever given in mapping document, we're just going to directly copy paste whatever the thing given here. And for the fields which are mentioned as direct mapping, you are just going to map the source field value. And in case where it is given a transformation, whatever the transformation logic they have specified, accordingly we'll be doing the transformation. And in case of mandatory, if the field is mentioned as mandatory, then we are supposed to create an exception. When I say we are supposed to create an exception, how we do it, yesterday Madhuri was showing, we were checking the length of that field. So in that case, we can, of course, even say this field is mandatory. You can check whatever the source field value you are getting it here, and you can check if the length exists, which means you are checking the length is greater than 0. If it doesn't have any value, that is going to be returned true, and you can generate an exception. So that is how we handle this mandatory optional. And I think with the source structure you are fine. You will get the sample structure put in mapping document like this. And for you to develop in IIB, you will also get the input file in your hand, because you will have, to parse it in the IIB toolkit, we need a separate sample file. This is just a layout to understand how the source field structure looks like. So that is your reference. And target structure same. The X part of the entire target field will be put here. That's it for file input. Okay. The last one will be a CDC BORD. CDC BORD is where we will hit the database. We will create a stored procedure. We will write our stored procedure in PLSQL, and then we create a data set out of it, and then we only feed it into IID. All that part will be done from our side. So this part, where it comes to picture, this middleware processing nodes tab will be filled. So you can see this SQL. This will be given from data mappers. They will have a discussion with SME or client someone. So they will create this SQL. What our job of developers is to create a PLSQL out of it. So you will be using this same SQL in your code, but that is going to be a PLSQL where you will have some additional function also. Tomorrow we have a separate session. Code-wise, we have a separate session. So just for your understanding, this is how an SQL, they'll be marking it in the middleware processing nodes tab. And the mapping tab, if you see here, as I said, this will be my source. All the source, here the source today. Earlier we were seeing the source field name. For both the MQ and the file, you were seeing the source field name. Since we are hitting a database in this point, we will have the table name for it. Okay, this will be my table. I have taken a BORD which has multiple source, so it is telling warehouse this and TST this. Okay, assume that you have only one source for this BORD. So this will be my table name and this will be my field name. So whatever the stored procedure, here, there will be a fields, whatever, we are not gonna fetch all the fields from the table. You'll be given a list of fields where here you can see, these are all the field names which are required in that. So all these field names will be put here. Along with this, on top of it, you will be given what all the field names that will be required in order to map here. So the very first time when you get, what we will have to do is, whatever the fields are here, make sure that fields are also copied here. In this document, we are not having, since I've taken an older version. So that field name will be mentioned here also, so that in some cases you'll be, say for example, for this vendor cost area code, this is the table name. From WDS table, I'm getting a field name vendor cost area. In some cases that will not be copied here. Somehow it might be missed. But what we will do is we'll create a stored procedure, we will generate, and at the time when you check the output, you will see that this particular field was not mapped. The reason, when you go back and see, we might have not selected this in our stored procedure. So at that time we don't want to go and get into do such kind of analysis. So better whatever the fields you have here, make sure that when you create your stored procedure, make sure all these fields are covered in that, so that you can avoid all these at the last time. So this is here mostly we will not do much transformation in this. Rarely you will concatenate two fields, or the timestamp conversion rarely you will get, but not like the non-series where we have much conversion like that in that BORD. You will not find it here. So the other part, everything is going to be the same. Say the data type, the target XPath, the target field name, if it is going to be an optional or mandatory, and if it is going to be a direct mapping or transformation, it will be mentioned here. This is the source table name, and this is my source field value. So in case of CDC BORD, no need of referring to source structure, because you will find all the table values here mentioned. So this will be good because we have all the details given here, so it is not required to go and see into this. So this is how you are supposed to understand the mapping document. Okay, mapping document part I'm done with. If there are not, if you don't have any question, maybe we can move into the next document, IDD. Sorry, BODD. Hello?
Yes, Sarila. So are you done with your session? That's what you said, or you're done with this topic?
What was that?
No, I didn't get the last part. So you said like your session is done, or you are done with this particular topic?
No, mapping document, understanding of mapping document is done. After this, we'll be moving into BODD.
Okay.
I think everyone, if you have any questions, you can ask. We can move to the next session. So this is a basic thing. We need to understand this mapping document. Only then we can start with our development. Without understanding this, we'll not be able to start with our development.
Yeah, that is correct. So this mapping document will be part of BORD, right? Or will it be a separate document? Yeah, definitely it's a separate document, but this will be part of BORD, right?
Here, I don't know if they are maintaining the mapping, but there will be a link in mapping document. Okay. If you go to any of the boards, the link will be mentioned. Okay. I was showing you the CDC, non-CDC and all. So this is the Confluent page for us. So all the information specific to the project will be available here. Once you get your LDAP ID, maybe you will get access to view all these, and you can read from here and you can have an understanding. Okay. Now the next one is BODD. So for any boards, what the data mappers and the designer, whoever is creating the BODD document, will upload the document here. From here we are supposed to, before starting with the development, from here we are supposed to go and read it. I will show you a sample of how a BODD document looks like. So this is my BODD link. So here they are giving the link for everything. Like Atul was asking that where this mapping document. So here you can see the mapping document link will be given. If you click the link, you will get a document similar to this. I just downloaded it for your reference. And this usage guide, this is everything for the very first time how it needs to be used. All these information it will be given here. The main thing what you need to get from this DD is the structure of it. Say if it is a CDC or non-CDC BORD, and how, if any, specific logic applicable or specific design applicable for your BORD, that will be mentioned here. So here I've picked you a reference of a CDC BORD where they're telling that database, all the events will be captured by EDIS and it will be published to Kafka. This is very high level one. And this one is how I showed that CDC pattern. That part is put here. And apart from that, all the details. So for this, since it is a CDC BORD, all these details are required. Like in Kafka, what it will be doing, IAB, what we do, what is the use of all these, it will be required. Okay, all these are for our reference only, because when later if someone comes and they want to know about this BORD, they will just go to this document and they will understand, because the basic knowledge of the BORD you can find only here. Say the requirement here, this is a BORD called waste management. So what they are telling is extraction of data from this waste managed BORD related tables. And how it will be done? It will be done through OGG, will trigger a Java batch and something like this. All these information, and as I said, we'll be creating a raw data set out of the table information. So that we'll be creating it here. And Java is a reusable component. So you can find all these kind of information here. And even this is one more integration diagram where they have shown a structure of how this BORD looks like. So this is going to be my main table. We will not have access to this DB because only here EDIS will come. This blue is our part. EDIS is our part. So through OGG, Oracle Golden Gate, whatever the transaction or events occur here in their DB, that will be replicated to my RDS table. You can assume this RDS as the user schema of EDIS. So from here we will hit Java batch will go and hit this table and create a row set, and it will be feeder into your IIB, and then we'll publishing it to a IIB. If any transformation or something required, it will be doing, and the messages will be published to a Kafka. And here, from here, the consumers can come and consume. So all these kind of information, you can find it in your design document. Here you can also see the abbreviation, what it stands for. Essentially, you all are new to it, you can just have a look when you get your LDAP, access to your LDAP ID. And yeah, there is also another mechanism we are doing, that is, we call it as message log framework. That I'm not gonna explain you in detail, just an overview of that, what it does. So what this message log framework is, we will be capturing the audits and exceptions. Since we are in the middleware, assume the source may say that they have processed the data. Here it is a CDC BORD. I'm just telling you for an example. Assume here the source is sending you input in XML format. Say if they are sending here and we didn't get that information, but here the consumer expects that the data should be processed and they should be able to consume it from here. So we will not know that the source has processed source has sent us the message and we will not process it. But to avoid all this, what we have brought into picture is a message log framework where you will have the input audits, output audits, and exception log. What this input audit will do is, when you get any information from source, there is going to be a log maintained in your database. So all these information, message log and this message log framework, all the information will be loaded into your database. So when you get an information from source, that will be marked as audit input into your database. And when after you process, an output audit is going to be logged. And in case, say, if my source is sending an incorrect format, if I'm expecting if I'm expecting a file with a valid format and say if I'm expecting a Windows file and they are sending it from a Unix system, of course my IIB is not going to understand because I've already mentioned accept only this kind of file. In that case, we are supposed to throw an exception. So that when we throw an exception, we can, the source will be able to know, okay, this is the exception, this is what the expectation is. So, of course, they can send us back the correct format of file so that IIB will be able to understand and process the correct format of file. So, that is the main intent we have as message log framework. We have two tables for it. One will be my ordered table, another one will be my exception table. The detailed session we have in the upcoming sessions. Since I saw this error handling strategy, I came into my mind and I just wanted to let you know. All these information like the application name or this information when you start, say if you are getting a BORD and this document is still not ready, then in that case what you need to, you cannot put your own application name, and we have a certain naming conventions in Albert sense, so only that naming convention is to be followed. So we will, you need to go and get back to the designers, whoever in your team, and you need to ask them like what will be the names for all these. So because they'll be giving you the name, and only in that naming convention we are supposed to create our flows. And we have some user-defined exception also. For example, one will be the mandatory exception, and there are also some other exceptions. We will explain you later. So all that information, see, they've given a code for every kind of exception. This should be generic for all the bonds. So here, if it is 05 and the business mandatory source data is not available, then this code should be followed. Whoever creates, even your BORD may be different. For all of the BORDs, we are supposed to have the same error code for this particular source mandatory field exception, and this 7 for this particular. So that should be, keep in mind that we are supposed to follow all the error codes also, not different for everything. And all these, this is what.
So what is the difference between this? Can you go to that exception?
Which one, Atul?
Yeah, 5 and 7. What is the difference between these two?
Source data.
This is business mandatory.
Source data for the XST mandatory field is we have XST for our target CMM, right? All the target elements.
Okay.
Yeah, that will be that. Some mandatory field will be mandatory in source and some will be in target. They will send a set of files. I assume if they are sending an input file in over XML, that XML file will have some fields and say in their end they will have it as mandatory. Whatever I showed in mapping document as an example was I was showing the target CMM. This document name will be mandatory. But in the, when you say the exception code file, you are asking is the source field. Whatever the file they are going to send, that will be mandatory from their end. We have seen the cases in very few, but not everything. But we should make sure if any fields are mandatory from the source also, because we are generating a different exception for each.
Okay. Okay, fine. Yeah, let's move on.
Yeah. Just for your reference, you can look into order schedule where we generate this business mandatory field exception. I haven't seen for all the BORDs, but I have come across this order schedule BORD where we generate this 5 and 7 exception.
I have seen that mandatory field exception. So I was just trying to differentiate between business. There was like two, right? Business field, mandatory business. Can you go that there? Sorry.
Yeah, Hitesh here. Atul, actually, what happens is like we have a mandatory field in XSD. So that I think that part is clear, right? Like those fields should be there and should be part of your canonical. Okay. In addition to that, what happened like from source point of view, when you are having the input file, let's say you are getting employee data. So employee ID is something you should be having in your input, right? So that is like it may not be mandatory in your XSD, it may not be a mandatory part of your canonical, but in the input file it should be present. So that we named that thing as business mandatory thing. So for input file to make sense, those fields should be there.
Okay. Okay. Got it.
So this particular array is for business mandatory fields, the first one. The second one is from XSD, that is mandatory fields in the canonical.
Yes, sir. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. And the final thing will be your deployment diagram. This is how a deployment diagram looks like. From here, we'll be able to figure out our queue name and what will be my server. We have 3 different environments, dev, QA, and prod. And after QA, we have a separate environment UAT also. So for everything, that environment variables may change. So from here, you will be, this is the prod one. If you see here, it is EACD PR, which means PR, which means prod. So in case of dev, you will have a DV, and in case of QA, it is QA in place of this PR. Whereas in other case, they say this is my Kafka broker values, where we have 6 servers. In case of dev and QA, it will be completely different. So in that case, we here the production deployment diagram, whereas in the we will have a separate link for every dev and QA also. From there you can take the deployment diagram. So this is how this particular board is a CDC board. So that is what they have mentioned here. So this will be my RDS main table. OGG will replicate. These are the tables that will be getting replicated. That will be feeded into my queue, input queue. From here, this whole part is my IIB part, is MQ input, compute, and publish. So we are supposed to publish, and this topic name also they have given here. And with the execution group, we are supposed to deploy. You might have seen yesterday, Pratyasha and Madhuri deploying your code to the execution group. In the higher environment, we have around 12 set of execution group where we can't go and deploy to any of the ET. For each specific bot, based on their volume, it may be assigned that this particular bot should be deployed to, because we can't deploy all the high volume bots to one single interfaces and cause any environment issue. So whatever the execution group mentioned here, only that will to that execution group will be deploying. So this is how our deployment diagram looks like. And all these, just your application name, your flow name, which is the queue name, all these kind of information. And yeah, that's it. This is how BODD looks like. BORD is not required for us because it is a high-level document. With the help of BORD only, we'll be able to create this BODD. But in developer standpoint, we are supposed to refer to BODD and start our development. So with this DD and mapping document, you can start creating a new interface. That's all about BODD. And I'm done with the session for today also. Any doubts you can ask. Atul, we are done for today.
Oh. Okay, then if anyone has any doubts, we can discuss that. Otherwise, we can drop off. Okay, then. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Shaila, for nice session. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.